Why are there so few racialized women in the C-suite? Part 1. Since 2018, the representation of racialized women in the C-suite has flatlined at 4%. The problem isn't the pipeline. Women of color represent 17% of entry-level employees, which is not quite proportional to the U.S. workforce, but not too far off. Men of color enter the workforce in the same numbers and make up 13% of the C-suite. White women make up 30% of entry-level roles and 20% of the C-suite. While both those groups are still underrepresented and shrink by 25% and 33% respectively, by the time they get to the top of the ladder, women of color lose more ground than both those groups combined. From the entry level to the C-suite, their representation decreases by 75%. The problem also can't be explained by attrition, as men and women leave companies at the same rate. It's a promotion problem. The glass ceiling is a well-established concept, but it's not the root cause of racialized women's lack of representation in senior leadership. Rather, it's a downstream impact. The rate of drop-off is less severe at the highest levels. Surprisingly, the highest hurdle is the first promotion, from individual contributor to manager. At this stage, women of color drop from 17% to 12%. The representation is already down by a third at the most junior leadership level. This is counterintuitive because developing an individual contributor to a manager is a very attainable goal, especially compared to developing an SVP in a C-suite material. But the latter has at least increased by a percentage point since 2016. There's been no movement at the manager level, despite the fact that developing managers is much easier than developing C-suite executives. There's also research that shows that racialized women are more ambitious for top roles than white women and white men. As a DEI goal, achieving equity at the manager level is low-hanging fruit. This is a highly motivated, career-oriented group of employees. With the right mindset and organizational support, most individual contributors can develop management capability, as long as they're given the opportunity. But women of color get the opportunity far less often than their peers. McKinsey and Lean In refer to this gap in first-level promotions as the broken rung, but it's only broken for racialized women. If anything, this rung and the rung after it act as springboards for white men, with representation jumping up to 50% at the director level. If fixing the broken rung is the only improvement organizations make to racialized women's career advancement, it would still double their numbers in the C-suite. If they also address the director level, it would triple C-suite numbers. It's a high-impact, low-effort, quick-win strategy, which is why some organizations have already created professional development programs and hiring practices specifically for women of color. But they're in the minority. Many organizations do not even track promotion rates for women of color, much less build programs focused on them. In the past, this lack of focus might have maintained the status quo. But in 2022, there is a high risk that inaction may mean backsliding by a generation. Women of color have been hit the hardest by the pandemic and burnout. Almost half plan to leave their jobs in the next few months. So while attrition may not have been an issue in the past, it's now a factor. We can't afford to wait anymore. The stakes are too high. It's either move forward or move backward.